Pokemon Scarlet and Violet is one of the laggiest Pokemon games to ever exist. And if you've been on the internet for long enough, then I'm sure you've seen multiple sources showing off glitches, slowdowns in certain areas, and even crashes since the game's release. But as you can tell by the title and thumbnail of this video, things just got even worse. Because the latest patch introduced with the Teal Mask DLC has just made things so bad for speedrunners that many of the speedrunning categories made for Pokemon Scarlet and Violet might just be dead. So how did things get this bad exactly? Well, there are quite a few culprits contributing to the death of this speedrun, but none can hold a candle to what Pokemon speedrunner Carolio just found. Right before the DLC patch had dropped, Carolio took the Pokemon Scarlet and Violet Japanese and English any percent glitchless world records. These new world records gave Carolio a solid comparison to how the DLC may or may not change the speed in which the game can be played, since patches have slowed down Pokemon games before. But what Carolio wasn't expecting was this. When Carolio had completed the Team Star Poison base 3 hours into his speedrun, the game got stuck on a loading screen for 2 entire minutes. Many of us speedrunners panicked seeing this and went straight to testing to see if this poison base loads were a permanent change to the game on the DLC patch. And the results we found were a bit of a double-edged sword, because those 2-minute loads don't always happen, which on one hand is great. There's a chance to avoid it, but on the other hand, giving us the hope of not getting the 2-minute loads can be really bad for the mentality of speedrunners, because you could be as far as Carolio was in his speedrun on world record pace, only to lose your run immediately to getting a 2-minute load. Now, this wouldn't be a problem if we knew what caused the loads in the first place, but as of right now, we've tried so many things and can't seem to stop this thing from happening. We've done things like turning off autosave, to saving and quitting, and even checking what Nintendo Switch everyone is running on, but nothing we do seems to be able to fix it. Now, I imagine at this point, some of you might be thinking, why not do the Team Star Poison base sooner so that you can reset more efficiently if you happen to get the 2-minute load? While that could work for the Team Star category, this really wouldn't work very efficiently for an 80% speedrun for multiple reasons. The first reason is that the levels of the Pokemon inside of the Poison base are decently high. The second reason involves the game mechanics of Pokemon Scarlet and Violet and the order we do the main story in. As of this video, the best and fastest way to beat Pokemon Scarlet and Violet is to beat the tutorial, catch Flamigo, then do gym badges and Titan fights before handling the Team Star bases and the entirety of Area Zero after wrapping up all 3 stories. And this is very set in place like this because of how gym badges affect catch rates and obedience. In past games, obedience was only an issue if you used traded Pokemon above a gym badge's level limit. But Pokemon Scarlet and Violet changed it so that all Pokemon caught above a badge's level limit will not obey you until you get enough badges. Even the catch rates of high-level Pokemon get worse the less badges you have. And in order to enter the Team Star bases, you need at least a team of 3 Pokemon. And since the 80% speedrun will switch from our starter to Flamigo, we'll at least have a second partner already in our party. But the third partner needs to be a high enough level to help take on every single base and the Ghost Gym one after another. And by the time we're ready to face the extremely high levels inside of the fighting Team Star base, we'll already have access to 7 badges, letting us catch and use Pokemon like high-level Haluchas or Scythers for the sections that require multiple Pokemon. Now, I know most of the gameplay inside of the bases involves the Let's Go feature, and you would think that obedience wouldn't be an issue with the Let's Go feature since it technically isn't a full-on battle. But unfortunately, a Pokemon caught above the obedience cap will refuse to attack a Pokemon with the Let's Go feature unless you have enough badges, which means waiting to take on bases until we have enough badges is the best option for speedrunning, especially when using lower level Pokemon in the bases causes them to die pretty quickly. And when your Pokemon die in the bases, they won't have enough energy to fight. forcing us to heal and making it way slower than using high-level Pokemon. Now, if that issue wasn't enough for you, then wait until you hear about the next two issues that have arisen as I was writing the script. This second issue is one that I found out about through shiny hunting with the Let's Go feature. For some reason or another, when you spam the Let's Go feature enough times, your Pokemon will be locked into the overworld, sitting there unable to KO more Pokemon. And if you try and return that Pokemon to its Pokeball with the ZR button, it won't go back into its Pokeball. I did end up finding a way to get it back into its Pokeball, which was to switch my lead Pokemon with something else in my party through the Y button. But this type of fix is not good enough for speedrunners, because not being able to spam the Let's Go feature inside of bases like we used to means our speedruns will be slower than the speedruns done on previous patches thanks to this nasty bug. But what if I told you one of the issues was so bad that you couldn't finish the game at all? Well, let me introduce you to issue number 3, the Great Crash of Area Zero. Once you've obtained every single badge, completed all 3 stories, and beaten the professor in the Area Zero lab, you'll find yourself facing off against the final fight versus Koraidon or Miraidon, depending on what game you're playing on. And if you happen to have a party of 4 to 6 Pokemon, your game will immediately crash if you try and hover over party slots 4 through 6. Luckily, this isn't an issue for any percent speedruns, since we only need 1 Pokemon to beat the game at this particular section. But for categories that catch a ton of Pokemon, keeping those Pokemon in your party might just be faster. Luckily, this can be dodged by pressing the up button to throw Miraidon into battle, but it's still something that could have killed someone's run if they didn't know any better. Now, this wouldn't be an issue if the Nintendo Switch let us revert to a previous patch of any games we played without having to factory reset, but unfortunately, that isn't an option. And either way, there's no real excuse for the state that the game is currently in. It's just plain sad, especially when a lot of the awful problems we've already had in Pokemon Scarlet and Violet since release haven't been fixed. Where's the performance patch? Why are we able to phase through the planet by just jumping around? And why is this the second time that Game Freak delivered a DLC patch so unoptimized that it killed a speedrun category? Yep, that's right. Because Pokemon Sword and Shield also got this slowdown treatment on the very first DLC that came out for Sword and Shield. The Isle of Armor patch added about 1 minute and 30 seconds of lag over the course of the entire game, by making it slower to enter your bag and even enter buildings. And to this day, it's still a problem that was never fixed. That is, until the second DLC for Pokemon Sword and Shield came out and introduced Dynamax Adventures. This let you access level 60 to 70 Pokemon to sweep the entire game with, and saved more time than the bag lag had taken away. So even though the lag was never fixed, the second DLC at least gave us a way out. And I'm kinda hoping that part 2 of the Pokemon Scarlet and Violet DLC might just do the same. But only time will tell once December of 2023 rolls around. But until then, if you want to keep up with the development of these Pokemon speedruns, consider subscribing for more Pokemon speedrunning news and content.